2, 1.
Happy
Happy
New
New
Year,
Year,
guys!
everyone!
Okay, I hope you're all having a good 2024.
Yeah, Mike, isn't this great? We end 2023, right? We end 2023 with our
Yeah,
episode, and we
okay.
start 2024 with our episode.
It's great. I mean, like, sustained podcast, we work hard to produce special content and great content for you guys. So please make sure to stay tuned and follow and subscribe.
Yeah, so this
know?
is episode 2 with Dr. Marlow. If you want to learn about sustainability, learn about engineering, learn about females in engineering, learn about a lot of different types of things in the Middle East, check out that episode. That episode's already out. It was out on Christmas Day. And now we talk about her backstory.
So more about engineering and stuff and networking. So if you're interested in engineering, this one is for you. If you're not, this one's still for you.
Exactly.
I myself am doing management. I love this. So okay, so it's New Year and New Year, new resolutions. So, Dr. Marlow, is there any New Year resolution for engineering in like the industry or like any engineering project, like a New Year resolution for this upcoming 2024 year?
Oh, well, Happy New Year.
Oh,
Happy
A
New
New
Year.
Happy
Year's
New Year, Dr. Marlow.
resolution. I've got to keep doing what I'm doing, I think. Keep trying to improve where we are.
Yeah. So the reason we didn't ask for a small introduction last episode is because we knew that we were going to do it now. So maybe you could give us a short introduction of who you are and like where you've come from and stuff like that.
Okay, so my background is I use the word chartered structural engineer. However, I'm now Dr. Marlow, and I did my PhD quite recently. I started it in 2016, finished 2020. So I've evolved my learning with my career.
So, was engineering your first love? You did mention about playing Legos and interested in these things in the last episode. But was it your first true love? You touched that Lego, you're like, I want to be a structural engineering. Was that what you wanted to do?
No, I think I probably got my hands in all sorts of places that my parents probably said no to, particularly plug sockets.
Oh,
my. Kids watching out there, don't do that.
Yeah, curious and found a way of starting to put things together. My first, I think, where I probably started to gauge that I was getting interested in things was through art. So I did art A-level, and one of the projects I started to get interested in was a bridge. And at the time I used like cotton and wood, and I lived in Brighton. I don't know if some of your podcasts know that, but there's the West Pier and the Palace Pier, and I found, looking at the underneath structure, how this thing stands up in the sea, really interesting. Also really quite attractive. And then the other thing I remember at the time is, again in Brighton, there's a lot of Georgian architecture, and these buildings get renovated because of architectural interest. And behind them will be a load of scaffolding keeping things up. So I was like, oh, how's that happening? And why is it staying there? And why is that going on? So I got quite interested in the structure behind things.
yeah. So you explored a lot of different areas, right? We talked about civil urban planning, right? We talked about ESG strategies and stuff like that. But why did you choose to go down this route of sustainability, which is the route I'm trying to go down as well, by the way? But
okay, so we'll go through my degree choices. So I started doing what was called architecture engineering at Cardiff University. And this is where I didn't quite know I'd be an architect or an engineer. And the projects we got exposed to, there was a little component of architecture where you go to the architectural school and you would do the engineering projects, whereas our colleagues may do roundabouts and water engineering or kind of the more dominant civil engineering subjects, we were going to look at buildings and look at building services, so how things were made, well, heated, watered, got electrical supplies. So we started becoming quite building focused, yet still understand the environment that we were building in. And over time, obviously, this became an architectural engineering degree. But one thing I do remember specifically, and it's actually an architecture module, was the concept of ecological buildings was taught. And what we now use quite regularly is BREEAM, so the Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Methods. And this was at the time where this is still relatively new stuff. It had only been about for about 5 or 6 years. And because I had a personal interest, we've not talked about my family background, but I had parents who were in the green green category of lifestyles, understanding that what we eat is important and where it comes from. So I sort of, when I sat in that talk about ecological buildings, I was like, yes, right, this is why the rainforest protection is important. This is why things could be done, or how things could be done differently. So I was able to take on board what I was being taught at maybe a slightly different level, because of that personal history of how I'd actually been introduced to these things at a younger age. So that was my architectural engineering practice. Then I went into industry. And then when you do a broad degree that has lots of factors in it, it's like, where do you fit? And going back to what motivated me to do what we're doing was more down the structural route. So at the time, the projects like Eden were just done, or about it in our built environment. So that real opportunity of playing with art and structure, and that sort of put me in the structural engineering category.
Now, obviously, I think we all know from the last episode, or if you haven't watched, you're the vice president of the Institute of Structural Engineering. So, how did you go up and got to this position? I mean, yeah.
We know you want to be humble, but
yeah.
Right, so we're going to continue with where my choices have taken me. So I came into engineering practice, and I soon realised that I had broader interests than just simple engineering, and understanding the buildings, how they are built and what they're built out of, and how they might hold value in society and the environment is important. It's not that structural engineers don't do that, it's just my interest started to get stronger in a particular way. And then I got more interested in about renewable energy. Going back to those solar panels and wind turbines, why, if we can build good buildings, why can't we make them use renewable sources? So I went and did a master's in renewable energy with architecture, taking me back to broad roots. And with that, we started to explore local climate conditions. So how does wind interact on the building? How does solar behavior interact with the building? And how do you use all those factors to reduce what we call energy consumption inside the building? So this real interactive process, and the master's was really insightful. And with that, I started to understand more about sustainable construction. So if you've got a building made out of glass and concrete and steel, it's going to behave very differently thermally to a building that might be made out of rammed earth. So being a structural engineer, I was able to understand the thermal behavior of some materials as well as the structural. And that's where the building science became very, very interesting. And also, whilst I was doing this, I was I was interested in where this was going, and I did two competitions. They're called the Young Structural Engineer International Design Competition. The first one I did in 2002 was about demountable structures. So how do you build something, and how do you travel it around, and what could it be? And I remember building a light aluminium shell that could all be folded on each other and then transported away. And then 2005, the building was, the competition brief was, do you build a building for 1,000 years, and what would you do with it? So that again pushed the kind of material construction, the understanding of how you can tread the earth lightly and how you can design lightly to do that, whether you should or not. So long-term and short-term spans of material construction. So that gives you an idea of where I was. How I got into the vice presidency was because I had won these competitions. I got involved with the institution, and the first one panel was, believe it or not, PR and marketing. And I remember this meeting because, or the involvement of this, because I was definitely the youngest person in the room. And then I got into the the educational panel meeting as a young person's voice. And it was with that education panel and educational trust, actually, at the time, that I was able to put forward how young people understood engineering. It's something I can't do in hindsight now. It was, as I was that age, I was able to give that insight and feedback. And that got me engaged, and it got me talking to other people in the institution that had similar views. And I really enjoyed that, because I think it's quite easy to be an engineering student or go into practice and maybe lose that direction or understanding of what your subject's about. So I enjoyed working with the institution.
I mean, okay, I'll just go for this because this is like one of the main questions that I have for you. You mentioned about like you won these competitions and then you made it up, and then being involved with the institution got you to where you are now. So you talked to Arwen about networking, and you talked to her about like trying to get her more exposed to um other world situations and then talking to people. So how do we build our own networks, and where do we get these connections, and how what does it take?
Really good question. I have found the networking quite difficult for my generation. I think today you've got young structural engineer group, or you might have a young engineering society at university, or even within your company. This is where you get together, you gather, you share ideas, you might share struggles, going, oh, how do you actually do that calculation? We weren't taught this. How have you done it? I think this mentoring or peer mentoring is really, really important to share what you're doing well and also what you're struggling with. And now, today, that those societies exist, and I think the access to good mentors and role models is really important. So with Arwen, I was able to talk to her and say, well, yes, I've been through this journey, and it's taken me 20 years to find role models, but also peers that I can talk to and have the confidence to talk to them. And my support is broader than necessarily my own company or who I work with, is with engineers that have similar values and similar learning values, actually. And a lot of those come through the Institution of Structural Engineers, or originated from there, through working groups. And one of the great things about the institution is there's something called a council. And on council, you'll have young members, you'll have regional members, you'll have people who've been in the industry a long time, people that have been in the industry a short time, people that are just interested, got engaged and got something to say and become part of their regional group. So you have this sort of foundation of very interested, engaged engineers. And the wealth of knowledge and the challenges and that are being placed on the profession are able to be talked about. So I think that's really great, and it's a great foundation to look forward to how we deal with things to do with sustainability, climate change, hazard scenarios, but equally it's supportive of people who might be one man or one person companies and may not have the same kind of how can I say, commercial collateral as a bigger organization. So it represents many people with different experiences and tries to provide a support to as many members as possible around the world.
Wow, I mean, like, there seems to be a lot of people involved in this kind of things and stuff. But like, for the young people out there listening, or people who are in or are not in the engineering like kind of world, do you have any tips or like how you build on connection, how you meet these kind of people in like your field, or people who are on the same level of mindset with you, with the same attitude?
I think a lot of it comes back to every generation has their own needs for what a good mentor and what good knowledge might mean. So at university is your university, your civil engineering society, your structural engineering society, just being engaged in university activities, ideally in an academic field as well as your social interests, so football or whatever. So just being engaged. When you join a company, some companies will have young members groups or a company program to support you through your early career development. Both institutions, both civil engineering, IStructE, CIBSE, they will have a program for graduates to follow and be supported with if you've got good mentoring. It is then down to you, you engineers, to continue your development. And obviously you get distracted along the way. There's life, and we all do it. And eventually you start to think, oh, right, I'm still in this profession, and maybe it's time for me to start proving to myself that I am capable of being responsible towards the designs that I'm creating. And this is what chartership starts meaning. So you start going towards your chartership status, going back to being responsible for safety and people and society, and understanding how you can do that earn fees to do it. So it's your commercial component, the legal side, your codes of practice, all these things construct a charter structural engineer. Then beyond that, it will then be about how you want to generate business, how you're going to earn your income doing what it is that you do, and how do you do good design. And you might actually really be interested in who you're working with, and you might get a landmark building, you might not. You might just be working with a domestic project, but that's great because it's still interesting. You've still got a problem to solve. And I think at the core of all of that is just being able to work with others or share with others your story. And that is all I can say. And I found that the institution and being engaged with that learning place of learning beyond my company, it's been quite supportive.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Kind of on a personal note, like with Sustainapod and what we've been trying to build here. I've tried to expand my own network. So going to connect with you through Arwin, that was a surprise, a pleasant surprise. Um, but it's like moments, it's like opportunities like this that are, I think that's what makes networking what it is. It's very hard and it's very time consuming as well to be able to find these people, but I guess it's rewarding in its own sense.
Yeah, people are busy doing all sorts of things, and I think through the choices that I've taken, I did a master's when I as a postgrad. I was about 25, and I did the PhD, which we haven't really talked about, when I had 2 children under the age of 5. And I've gone on a lifelong journey of learning because I am interested in my subject and my field, and my subject has got more and more into the world, the sustainable development, and pushing those boundaries. If I was a man, maybe 100 years ago, maybe it would have been the interest in concrete science, for example. That would have been the interest. So I think if you're a researcher and innovator, it might be or a learning, someone that uses universities and institutions is probably an easier networking journey. However, networks exist with companies. You'll get companies that they will sort of they might want to have work on bridges. I don't know, bridges or airports. There'll be a group of people that get together to talk about their stuff, and once you get pointed in the direction of that group of people that talk about their stuff, networking starts to become easier. And today we've also got social media, and LinkedIn is kind of the professional version of that. And you can start to follow people and start to follow where guidance comes from. And I think understanding where guidance comes from is quite important, because then you'll start to know whether it's good advice or not, and what you're reading from that guidance is whether you're learning from it or not. And quite often these guidance documents start to come through pillars of learning or institutions.
That's really interesting. I'm sure you have a lot of experience dealing with a lot of people's, interviewing a lot of people's. Like, I'm sure you do have a lot of those. Is there any like things that like stand out in your eye, or like things that you think are like the soft skill or even hard skills that you've seen in people who you've interviewed that really stood out and you think really sets candidate apart from other people, really make people special and unique?
To add on to that question, have you seen any changes in what people's skills and soft skills have developed? So from when you started interviewing people a long time ago to now, has there been
Hmm.
a difference?
I would say I'm going to answer that second part of the question first, because it's right in the front of my brain, and the word software is going beep, 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 beep. How we engage with science is got a lot more, I'm going to say, is easier than it ever has been before. So you're going to have your geographical information systems, stuff I was not taught about at university because it did not exist. So this software journey and the information we got access to is probably one of the biggest game changers in the last sort of decade. So with that comes whether you're trained in it, whether you computer code, program. I think those skills are quite helpful to have. But the bottom of all of that goes back to who you are and whether you're engaged in your subject. What do you know about your subject, and what have you found interesting about it? Because at the end of the day, you don't have to stick in your industry. But what's going to keep you there is going to be your interest and curiosity with what you're doing.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's a really, really good answer.
Um,
Follow up?
So if I got the job.
no, but in the reverse, actually, like avoiding any obvious answers, right? You've interviewed a lot of people before. What do you have any tips of how we present ourselves in an interview?
Oh,
Things
how do we
things that
stand out?
yeah, but like not the normal stuff. Like yeah, like is
Even
there
with
anything?
networking, how do I like be that guy? Like, wow,
Oh,
he's
do you know
interesting.
what? You might be talking to the wrong person because I don't like my CV, and forever there is a way of changing your CV so it looks better. You might have a CV, like my CV could be quite long nowadays, but at the time when you're just starting, you're just trying to even get things on one page and what is it that you've done. And over time, obviously, that gets easier because you start working on more projects. You start may get involved and engaged in other things, such as the institution. So I think it's really difficult to stand out. What does stand out is what you've been engaged with and what your interests are and how you've carried them forward over time. But as a graduate, it's difficult to do. However, you would have had like my interest was art, and I explained that in the last episode. I've always, that was my starting point, and that might be my hook, my anchor of how I might tell my story or forecast my story. So I wouldn't say I find it easy. I don't think people do. I think there's some people that can talk very well. Others might be shy and reticent and not sure about themselves, which is okay. All of it is okay. And it just takes a few deep breaths and a couple of sort of gentle questions to get somebody to open up and find that connection. But everyone's got something, and be patient and kind with yourselves, as I had to keep telling myself too.
Absolutely. This is not a diss to him. This is not a diss to anyone who does finance or investing. But as I have started my journey in civil engineering at Imperial, I have had a lot of seniors tell me if you want to switch to finance and investing, do so now. And their reason for that is one, maybe they don't have the passion for engineering, or two, they think investing and finance earns 2 to 4 times as much money in some cases. And so, do you have any thoughts on that matter? Like, there's a lot of people switching from engineering to banking and stuff like that.
I have a lot of thoughts. I've got positive ones and negative ones on that. Going back to what is sustainability, and we're on a planet with infinite resources, and at the end of the day, if we keep selling stuff and selling stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff, what does it mean? And that is how the banking crisis of 2008, I think it was, occurred in the first place. So yes, finance and investment is important, but today we need to make sustainable finance and investments because we have a planet to look after. And what are those decisions going to be made on? Not hopefully about how much money you can earn, but more about whether it's a good investment or not. And the person that's going to tell you whether it's a good investment or not, at the root of it, there will be a scientist or an engineer. And I think this is very difficult because yes, you're right. Engineers have great minds, great problem solvers, real aptitude to analyze, and you can transfer those skills into finance and banking if you want. I think if I did that, I might get a little bit bored. It's not that I'm not interested or can't do it. It's just I'd be starting to think about, well, what else can I be doing to make something better and constructive? And I think engineers are able to do that because there will be an investment that comes along to build 20 buildings of, let's call it, net zero objectives, where you're starting to be able to use that finance stream into creating a better urban built environment that it has an impact on people.
Mhm. Wow. I mean, listening to you, it really shows that you want to make a difference. You want to make a better place, the world a better place. You want to help people and you want to save a burning planet from this climate change and everything. So, to fellow potential engineers or future engineers or people who are related in the industry, do you have a word for them right now for joining the sustainability engineering sector or sustainability in general?
My one word would be participate. If you want change to happen, you've got to be a part of it. And everyone has a voice, whether it's in finance or engineering, and there'll be a way of using that voice. So I think in the last episode we talked about maybe community projects and carbon offsetting, and I think there's a lot of people that have similar views, and social voice is quite powerful. If we all get together and all share how we might think about things, we have a vehicle to challenge and maybe propose better ways of practice. So that local planning policy that might exist that say we don't want our buildings to be white because it might change the architectural. You could find a way of actually saying, well, let's look at that again. Let's think about climate action, and anyone can think about climate action and participate. But at the end of it, you've got to participate to become a part of it.
So, yeah, to be part of the change, you must. Okay, to make a change, sorry, cut. To make a change, you must be a part of the change. That was really, really good saying, and I like it. So, thank you very much, Dr. Marlow, for joining me and Paco today on this episode, on this very, very special episode, this very, very special day. Thank you for sharing your insights.
And we
Well,
will
Happy New
continue to
Year.
work. Oh yeah, and
And
happy,
Happy New Year,
Year.
guys. Happy New Year, Dr. Marlow.
And we will continue to work hard and provide content for every one of you Sustainapod listeners. We're writing blogs, we're finding partnerships, we're finding sponsors. We're doing Cantonese episodes, we're doing Mandarin episodes. So
Maybe
there's
Thai episodes one day.
maybe Thai episodes. So we're trying to do a lot of things right now. So the best thing you can do for us right now is try to follow us, give us a share,
Stay tuned.
and stay tuned for more. And
Once
well,
again,
that's it.
from us, Sustainapod team.
Happy New Year, everyone!
Okay, have a great year, guys.
Thank you.
And see you again.